was getting up at 8 a.m, finishing work at 7 o'clock, stuffing some food in my face, diving into bed, wash, rinse and repeat 5 days a week, and then getting wasted on the weekend. Forming kidney stones, and I was super stressed every day whether or not I was going to pee another one of these things out or get it stuck inside. And it was pretty painful. I had more and more antibiotics, and I was peeing 30 to 50 times a day. I was in and out of the doctors, and I said to him, like, what's wrong with me? And he shrugged his shoulders and said, can't find anything wrong. And yet, I was falling apart. So it showed me that typical medical route couldn't really help with what I had going on. And that's really where biohacking is dialing these things in. It's like, what are you missing, and what can we use technology-wise or nature-wise to reverse that?
Top 3 that really made the biggest difference.
Hydrating properly. So if you're drinking low mineral water, you're constantly thirsty to drink more water, which means you're being filled up with more water, which means you pee more. Number 2, sleep properly. We sleep so that we can reverse the damage and heal from the damage done during the day. Most issues that people have had with their health could be reversed by improving their sleep properly. The biggest thing is, if you were to eat fruit, veg, organic clean meat, wild fish, herbs, coffee, herbal teas, maple syrup, what else do you need? Food doesn't have ingredients, it is the ingredients.
Welcome to the Intelligent Change Podcast. I'm here with Tim Gray, aka Tim Biohacker. Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you were part of our Intelligent Change Summit, which was incredible. But I want to really find out, and where I want to start is, how did you get into this whole biohacking space? Where did the journey begin for you?
I didn't know I was a biohacker for like 5 years. This is the thing. I was running a marketing agency. I was getting up at 8 a.m, finishing work at 7 o'clock, getting home, working, stuffing some food in my face, diving into bed, wash, rinse and repeat 5 days a week, and then getting wasted on the weekend. And
the usual.
Yeah. I
For
mean,
the
pretty
UK,
much, yeah, it's the healthy lifestyle. Eating, a piece of fruit a day, because you've got to eat some fruit and some veg, and probably snacking on Pret sandwiches or something, thinking that was healthy because it had salad in it. I went traveling and came back, and then kidney stones hit me, strangely. And it'd been after having antibiotics for months, and I won't bore you with the full details, but essentially it came to a burnout point. I literally couldn't continue anymore, and I was forming kidney stones, and I was super stressed every day whether or not I was going to pee another one of these things out or get it stuck inside. And it was pretty painful, like extreme. That's where it began. And then I had more and more antibiotics, and because of the kidney stones and various things going on with my health, I was peeing 30 to 50 times a day, and it's just insane.
And how old were you?
So this was 11 years ago now.
So you're very young.
Yeah, so it's 33-ish. And just like, I went from being, okay, not even really getting hangovers, not having any health issues, to falling apart, to the point where I couldn't leave the house. My mum would have to drive me to the doctors. And, as a 34-year-old, having to be driven to the doctors by your mum is a bit, And I'd been very successful to that point. I'd run multiple companies. The company was doing millions a year. I was like super happy in my work life. And I guess it's just the straw that broke the camel's back. So actually, I sold a piece of the company to a dude that came in as a COO to structure the company and put things in place to take some pressure off me. And he one day tipped some MCT oil in my coffee, and there was a floating layer of oil in it. And he was telling me about this bulletproof executive dude that, that can switch your brain on and whatnot. Anyway, I didn't really pay much attention to it, but I had this layer of oil in the top of my coffee for a year or so, and worked the best I could, but my health deteriorated more and more and more. And then one day, someone sent me a link to Bulletproof Radio with Dave Asprey. And then I heard what a biohacker was. And to that point, I'd done gut cleanses, taken hundreds of supplements, tried all the different things. None of the doctors could see anything on the test results. In fact, when I was in and out of the doctors, every week, and 1 week I'd been in 5 consecutive days. And I said to him, like, what's wrong with me? And he shrugged his shoulders and said, can't find anything wrong. And yet, I was falling apart. So it showed me that typical medical route couldn't really help with what I had going on, even though everything on paper was fine. So I just kept on digging. And so I heard about Bulletproof Radio, I heard this podcast with Dave Asprey, heard about some other cool things such as hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I tried hyperbaric oxygen therapy, loved it. But there was a place out in Kent, so I'd have to travel 2 hours to get there, have an hour session, 2 hours back. So it's 5 hours twice a week. And I just felt alive from it. And I realized that there was something in this alternative treatment that could help me. So I decided to open a clinic, which I did in Mayfair, in hyperbaric oxygen therapy, just so I could use it myself. Started reaching out to a few influencers and getting a few people in the clinic. And then I became Tim Biohacker. So I've got Dave Asprey and his podcast to thank, for introducing me to the mindset. And then it's kind of evolved from there. And that was about 2015, 2016.
And what has been those kind of really pivotal things that you did, you believe, let's say top 3, that really made the biggest difference in making that difference in your life?
Number one, the biggest thing is knowing that the medical system is great for medicine and great for treating symptoms if you've got something going on, but the root cause of health issues, often they don't have a clue because they are trained in universities with pharmaceutical mindset first and have, maybe 6 to 8 hours of nutritional training in their whole 6 or 7 years of training. There's the warning sign right there. Don't get me wrong, medical system is fantastic. If you break your leg, have an emergency, fantastic. They've literally saved me. I'm not going to complain. However, the functional mindset or the alternative health, there is a lot of great things in there that can help. So my point is medical system, alternative and functional, should work synergistically to help chronic health issues and emergency care. So number one is trust that your doctor can't be trusted with everything. That's the biggest thing of everything, because that's the mindset shift. And second would be sleep properly.
And what do you mean by that? What is sleeping properly? Because people are like, I go to sleep, I wake up, I sleep. That's
exactly. It's binary for people. I sleep, I don't sleep. It's good or bad. Point is we sleep so that we can reverse the damage and heal, i.e. we're saving energy while we sleep to use that energy to repair our bodies from the damage done during the day. So if we need 7.5 to 8 hours sleep and we only sleep 6, there's an hour and a half of healing or reversing damage missed out. You may feel okay and you may think, I can get by on 6 hours, but your body isn't having the recharging time. It's like having your phone plugged into the wall for half the time and expecting you to have 100% battery. It's just not going to happen. So people think sleeping is something that you have to do just that you don't feel tired. But in fact, it's something you have to do to reverse the damage. Number 2. And what can you do within that? There's a whole variety of things that you can do. For instance, stop using lights after sunset because light stops us secreting our sleep hormone, or wearing blue blocking glasses, which is what we're famed for wearing. You look crazy and like a diva-like, but that light entering your eyes tells your brain it's midday, especially if it's bright blue light like we've got on the camera here, behind the camera. So that would be one. So people that track their sleep, such as biohackers typically do, will see their sleep stages, and it's a rough estimation because you can never track perfectly, but it tells you a rough outline of how good or bad your sleep is, more than, yes, I feel good or don't. And then all the different things you can do to optimize your sleep. So in my opinion, most issues that people have had with their health could be reversed by improving their sleep properly. And the next one, it would be hydrating properly. Now, a large percentage of us is water. And if that is crappy water full of toxins and heavy metals or pollutants because it's come from the tap, and we're expecting to replace our high quality water in our body with crappy water from the tap, how can you expect your electrical system to work properly? Because electrolytes come from water and from food sources, obviously, which are minerals. How can we expect to have the right energy and repair properly if we haven't done those two things properly? And when I'm on stage and I ask people who here, tracks their sleep or, sleeps more than 7.5 hours a night, so few people put their hands up. And how many people actually drink properly filtered or purified water and remineralize it so you get the electrolytes? Hardly anyone. These are two of the fundamental things that we need for health, and yet nobody's doing them.
So can you let us know, how do we properly rehydrate water or create water source? Like, what are the, I have maybe a water filter, or maybe people have certain things, but I'm still curious even myself in regards to how can I have a high quality water source?
So it's very difficult unless you're next to a spring in the mountains somewhere to have mineral rich. Like, for instance, if you think about it, a stream comes down through the mountains, through the rocks, comes out It's mineral rich and live water. It hasn't got all the chemicals and nasties in it, for the first point. Now, if you're drinking tap water, especially in a city, which is even worse, obviously it's gone through a whole load of processing. It's got chlorine in, which helps kill your gut bacteria. It's got all the different impurities. And if you look at the piping system, and you can Google this, looking at what the mains water pipes are like, you'll see that they're rusty, corroded, have loads of crap in them. You're drinking that. What can you do about it? You can filter it with a normal filter, which helps a little bit, like with a Brita filter. But to be honest, that's just ticking a box and making you think that it's good. You can use various other purification systems like distilling, but that makes it dead water. My preference personally, and what I found works for me, is reverse osmosis water filtering. And you can get an under-counter one done for 150, 200 pounds, where you just have reverse osmosis water on tap. And then what I do is I sprinkle a tiny little bit of Celtic salt, which is 78 to 82 trace elements and minerals, as comes from the sea. Which gives us the minerals we need. Now, the thing is, if you drink water low in minerals, your body needs more water to get the minerals levels that we need for our blood. So if you're drinking low mineral water, you're constantly thirsty to drink more water, which means you're being filled up with more water, which means you pee more. So this is why people are walking around with 2-litre bottles of water coming around the gym and this and that and the other, walking down the street needing water, because it's so low in minerals. In fact, they're needing more water to get the minerals that they need to rehydrate. So if you reverse osmosis it, very simple, you can get a countertop or under counter, and a little pinch of Celtic salt, you will retain the water better, you'll be more hydrated, you'll drink less, and you'll feel better, and your brain will be alive because you have the electrolytes for your body. So this is where chronic fatigue is a massive piece. People aren't drinking enough, or they're drinking too much. And this is where my 30 to 50 times a day peeing came from. I was so dehydrated. I was drinking more and more water, but not getting the minerals, so I'd pee more. And I found out, actually, for me specifically, I was deficient in potassium. And by adding potassium back in on its own, helped me retain the water, and within 2 days, I stopped peeing 30 to 50 times a day, 5 to 6 times a day tops. So it just shows how easy it is, and yet you find a doctor that would ever tell you that.
Yeah, and I think what you were speaking about is like you think very fundamental things that so many people miss. As you said, water and sleep. If you think about it, those are like the 2 ingredients to life. You know, you can't survive without either of those, and it's the foundations. So I think I would love to actually get a little more tips from you on sleep, and so potentially, what are some other, you've gave some tips in regards to avoiding blue light, but in regards to regularity and going to sleep, do you also believe potentially that some people are, have different sleep stages where they are night owls or early birds or whatever you want to call it? But I'm just curious of your other takes and tips on sleep, because I think it's so important to cover these too.
Ultimately, we're all different, but we're all the same. And I think there's probably less than 0.5% of people who actually are night owls. There are people that are more light sensitive than others. So if you think ancestrally, we would be in camps and you would have a few people that would sit up and keep watch at night. Okay, so there might be those ones that always did that, and so therefore their genes are more wired to be awake during the night, just because they feel so. But we also evolved with campfire and not with household lights at midday height light. And our skin is photoreceptive, our eyes are very photoreceptive, which is why we have vision. And so if you have light that's at midday height and blue light, this obviously wakes us. Some people are so much more light sensitive. For instance, I have a friend of mine that has had like 5 to 10 minutes of deep sleep ever since he had an Oura ring. He's always felt shocking. He was very successful, corporate, but could never sleep properly and felt shocking, and he was just struggling to get by. So I said to him, try blue blocking glasses. And it moved it like 1%, nothing. It was very strange. We tried everything to get his sleep organized, tried, for instance, eating around before sunset so that your body's not processing food while you sleep. Tried winding down, reading, wearing blue blocking glasses, everything. So I said to him, I want you to do a test for me for 3 nights. At sunset, I want you to turn all the household lights off. I don't want you to play with your devices. I want you to use only candlelight, which is, more red light spectrum than blue flickering light. And wear blue blockers and go to bed, when you start feeling tired. Anyway, so we did that, and all of a sudden his deep sleep went to 25% overnight. And within 3 nights he said, I can't believe it, for the first time I can ever remember I've slept properly. I feel amazing. he was super light sensitive. Even though he always thought he was just a night owl, he would actually sleep when he was exhausted because his body just couldn't continue anymore, and then would wake with sunrise in the morning because that's the circadian rhythm basically saying time to get up. So he was just exhausted. So there are things like that. Eat before sunset. Some people actually sleep worse when they don't. So actually a teaspoon of honey before they go to bed actually gives them the glucose that they need so their body's not in fight and flight. They actually sleep better. So it's good to test that one. Make sure that you're hydrated before bed, but not too much, because otherwise you wake up to pee. But if you have the right minerals, you retain it. Wear blue blocking glasses after sunset. Don't play with your device in bed like this with blue light, because it just stimulates you instead of secreting melatonin. There are various other more intricate things, such as having a grounding bed sheet, which means that you're earthed out, giving a flow of free electrons, which helps your body repair better and sleep better. I find some people that have, like, for instance, a grounding bed sheet or spend half an hour in the garden every day, and we can talk about grounding in a bit, actually have the level of electrons in their body that they need for their body to operate electrically, and therefore they sleep better. So there are intricate things you can do as well that sound woo. But grounding, now there are actually 23 studies, including peer-reviewed studies, showing how grounding, which is a flow of electrons from the earth into our body, actually benefits health and performance. So it's not woo anymore, and yet, people that are old school saying, "Oh, I don't believe in that crap."
Yeah, definitely. And when you think about grounding, because you said this kind of grounding sheet, I always think about, like, especially places like in these modern cities now where people are living these skyscrapers on like floor 80 or in Dubai or somewhere like that. Does that, I just think, like, you're so far away from the ground. Does it affect, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. So the earth is electromagnetic. And if we're contacted with the ground, like, for instance, our feet sweat. And we have moisture on our feet, which helps us connect to the ground. And you can measure the voltage of your body when you're grounding or not. And you can see how it adapts based on you standing on the ground. Okay? If you're wearing rubber sole shoes, you don't connect to the ground, but you are nearer it. You are much nearer. For instance, one of the grounding bed sheets I use at the moment, and it's from the Samina sleep system, no affiliation, but has a magnetic earthing bed sheet. So you're not lying on metal, like silver-lined bed sheets. It's magnetic. The nearer you are to the ground, the more connected you are to it. So in theory, if you're on floor 50 of a tower block, you're nowhere near Earth. You're not getting any free electrons. So you need to be in the garden or standing barefoot on the sand or something or other like that. Because our body is very, very simple, but very complicated. Think of the sun as the positive and the earth as the negative. And lightning strikes the ground and connects. And then that gives the free flow of electrons to the earth for us to collect when we're standing on it. But if you're not standing on it barefoot and you're high up in a tower block, you're not going to be getting that. So I question how someone's health could flourish in that scenario. And in fact, astronauts have a similar problem. And look at all the technologies that NASA create to keep astronauts healthy because they're so far from the Earth. It's so far from nature. And yet people would call grounding woo.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm personally been practicing grounding by, I think one of the most important things to me is to have green space as close to where you live. So even if you don't have a backyard yourself, maybe you're close to a park or you have some sort of a garden that you can access to. And I found that for myself, because I've been now doing this probably for almost the last decade since I lived in London, is on a daily, one of my kind of morning routines is I try to get out to the garden as early as I kind of wake up, and I usually do kind of my little yoga, stretching, my 7-minute workout barefoot. And when it's not too wet here in the UK, I'm able to do that. Most of the year it's actually fairly good, even when it's sometimes a little frozen ground, I go out. And what I've noticed after years of doing that, if I find myself in a city, let's say Lisbon is a good example, beautiful city, but there's not a lot of actually green space. And I literally am like, I just don't feel as connected when I'm not getting my current charge of that force. And I think I'm able to notice it because I've been doing it for so long. And maybe it's some sort of a placebo or something like that, but I do see a difference. So what's your take in regards to I guess, the grounding effects, and what kind of maybe protocols or things that people can implement in their days to interact with the earth, because a lot of us don't.
It's a very, very good point, actually. So first of all, if you look at someone's blood, red blood cell under a microscope, dark field, you can see someone that doesn't earth very much, or if at all, and you'll see that the red blood cells are all clumped together. After 40 minutes of grounding, you'll see that the red blood cell is equidistant. It's putting the charge, electrical charge, back into the blood accordingly, so the blood flows better, which means, better blood flow means better energy, cognition, the lot. That's the first thing. Secondly, on thermography scans of the body with inflammation before and after 40 minutes of grounding, you see a significant shift in the scans. So also people that report, and then this is more anecdotal opposed to more science-based, people that have inflammation or grounding, like joint pains, arthritis and things like that, find that when they incorporate grounding back in, they start to lose that and become much better. So that's kind of the proof or evidence behind, and I'm not talking about the peer-reviewed studies, which you can look at on PubMed, the actual things behind earthing or grounding. Now, the other thing is if you think about Atomic Habits, for instance, which is obviously a famous book, very well accepted. One of the things I took from that book, which I'd always done historically anyway, was if I want to go out and I've got something to post, I'll put it in the middle of the doorway so I trip over it so I don't forget it. Okay, so with my workspace at home, when I am at home, I have a standing desk. Next to it, I have a rebounder, so that it's always there, so I see it. So in between calls or whatever, I can have 3 to 5 minutes of rebounding, which is good for circulation and lymphatic flow. I have a pull-up bar between the bathroom and the hallway, so every time I go through it, I can do it. There's these things set up. So when it comes to grounding in a garden, if you have a garden, you're much more likely to walk out and step in it and have your coffee in the morning grounding, just have 5 minutes to yourself. If you don't have one, it's that little bit of extra effort where you don't trip over to do it. So when I lived in my last place, I had a massive garden. I'd get up every morning, I'd make my coffee, I'd walk out into the garden, look up at the sky, stand grounding for 15, 20 minutes, do my Instagram probably while in the garden, put the phone down when I walk back in and leave it. But now I don't have a good outside space in my apartment because I haven't been in London so much. I don't have a garden or a door to the outside, it's an apartment block. It's like I find it very difficult to go outside with my coffee. And then I come into the sofa and I sit on the sofa and I have an earthing floor mat where I stand, but then I play on my Instagram, and then 40 minutes later I realized I've been playing on my Instagram, even though my morning miracles, which is my routine, I've forgotten about. So it's kind of like breaks that automatic pattern. So if you do live in an apartment and you haven't got an outside space, I understand it's very difficult. And even as a leading biohacker, it's very difficult. We are humans, if the bread's on the table, a lot of the time people will pick it up. Don't put it on the table. So the advice would be, if you are to move, try and get somewhere where it makes it easy for you. Whereas when you're in the current place, for instance here, I would get earthing bedsheet. A couple of £100, you plug it into the earth point of the wall socket, earths you for 7 or 8 hours a night, every night, and you're getting the free electrons without having to go into the garden. And that's really where biohacking is dialing these things in. It's like, what are you missing? And what can we use technology-wise or nature-wise to reverse that? So that's an example.
Yeah, I'm a big nature guy. One of the things that I've found works for me beautifully, especially when I travel, if I'm traveling to a place where there's a body of water, if I can go into for like a swim after a flight, I find that has tremendous just feeling. So is that part of the grounding elements?
Yes. Yeah, it's the best part of grounding, actually. So if you think about standing on the ground barefoot on sand or grass, you're connected via the bottom of your foot. When you're swimming, you are immersed in it completely. So it's hyper grounded. So it's almost like a turbo boost, I would say. So for instance, I know that when I've slept badly and I'm on holiday or whatever, and I go for a swim, you come out feeling revived. It can be a deficiency of electrons. And if you look at how our mitochondria or our batteries work, you see it's all about electrons, electron transport chain, and all the processes of energy production. So if you're feeling knackered, swimming is great, not only because it's refreshing, but also because of the electrons that you get from it. So it's very intuitive of you. And it's funny because my girlfriend, Anna, she I would say is a city girl typically, but she loves swimming in natural bodies of water. When we look, she definitely needs grounding more than most people. In fact, her body really is reliant on it, and whenever she swims, she feels amazing. So that's one of the things that she's always intuitively felt she needed, and she didn't know why. And so you tell her to incorporate grounding, have an earthing bed sheet, or in the bed system I have, and she feels so much better for it. It literally changes her immediately.
Exactly. And it's like these little hacks you can do. Even when on holiday, I see a lot of times people swimming in the pool. I'm like, there's the sea. Like, what are you doing in a chlorine pool when there's an incredible, like, a body of sea salt, like, water that's full of magnesium probably and all these other kind of minerals and that are so important to us. So versus like a pool full of sunscreen most likely and things like that. So what are those other potential, day-to-day things or just life general things that you believe are important for people to know as they're listening to us speaking right now?
The next important thing would be natural light exposure. So it's basic. Again, it's another basic one. The problem is like the other key biohackers, mutual friends and colleagues, are generally more American or are American, and natural things aren't as sexy or sellable. And there's nothing against obviously my American colleagues at all, but the point is Americans are more financial and
it's also the culture, I think, of consumerism. Like I've come from North America. I grew up in Canada, and especially even the difference between when you go to a place like New York or LA, you cannot breathe without spending money. Like it's just the culturally, a lot of the society is built around money, which also helps you actually make more money. It does help. However, when it comes to living a lifestyle, it can be this idea that you must buy something in order to improve. And this is one of the reasons why I am kind of, one of the questions I'm asking and focusing on more on the natural things, because I think we have at our disposal the greatest resources possible. As we were talking about, the ground, the sun, which you're about to get to, the air, which is probably going to be another topic we can kind of get into, these basics, or sleep, which is probably one of the biggest factors as we discussed. But I find like these are the fundamentals. And if we can cover these, yes, okay, we can then talk about, maybe we will later, in terms of other supplementation and other things that we can do. But I think without having these fundamentals covered, like you're not gonna, I think this idea that a pill is gonna like do everything for you, it's not gonna happen.
I agree. And that was my point about Americans versus, European or myself, is that English are far more reserved when it comes to these things, and they always feel like they're being sold to. And we are a funny bunch. I'm not gonna deny it. We are a funny bunch.
I love the English. That's why I'm here.
But the point is for the Americans, the natural stuff first isn't, in my opinion, as sexy. And then it's not going to be as effective being natural. It's the same with the pharmaceutical world. If it's natural, it's probably not going to work as well. And I think, unfortunately, saying sleep better, ground more, drink better water isn't sexy and isn't as sellable, and it's not as marketable, and you can't make as much money from it, and therefore is it as good? Point is, these are the fundamentals of health. And in fact, when I launched my course a year ago, I didn't do a course on biohacking or beginner's guide to biohacking. I did it on the fundamentals of health, which is less sexy and more risky, but for me, integrity wise, it's like sleep well, eat well, hydrate well, ground well, love well, relate well, move well, etc. All the basics. And once you've got those down, do anything you want to do within biohacking if you find it fun. For instance, I love hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I love it. I opened a clinic on it. But until you're doing breath work or breathing properly and learning to breathe through your nose instead of through your mouth and trying mouth taping and all the basic stuff, why would you do hyperbaric oxygen therapy at a couple of $100 an hour? It's bonkers. It's almost like saying, okay, I don't want to sleep properly, just give me a tablet that keeps me awake. Doesn't have longevity in it. In fact, I sat down with a longevity billionaire a couple of years ago, actually just before COVID, and I said to him, what are you doing for your health? And he was drinking a bottle of normal wine. And he said, nothing, I'm paying people to fix that one for me. He's doing nothing about it, like literally nothing, but expecting to have longevity. He's 10 years older than me, and yet he looked a lot more than 10 years older. So these fundamentals is my point. I completely agree. But I still dabble with everything else, and technologies and tracking and breathwork devices and hyperbaric chambers and blood filtering and ozone therapy, and all these things are great fun, but unless you've got the fundamentals down, it's pointless. So that's exactly it. So yeah.
So in regards to those fundamentals, one of the things you kind of touched on is about connection and relationships, and potentially, especially with having a partner, like skin to skin, probably touching, whatever it may be. I had a funny story from a dinner I had yesterday. But anyways, to not digress, what is this kind of also the science in regards to connection and that connection to health of connection?
Well, first of all, I think, as you well know, your network is your net worth. So number one, and it's like, I think there was a meme I saw on Instagram of all places, which was, if you hang around with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 5th. If you hang around with 5 smokers, you'll be the 6th. Like if you hang around with 5 negative people, you'll be the 6th, and blah, 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 blah. Our network is our net worth, and that can be positive or negative. So that's number one. So choose those people wisely, because they influence you without you even realizing it. Our language becomes that of our friends. Our mindset becomes that of our friends. And it only takes one bad egg, for instance, in a company setting, to be toxic to actually break that team up. Whereas if they're all growth mindset and helping each other, they become more of that. So, in psychology, which is a large part of my background, was, we become that more of that which we are. And if you have someone that's the opposite, they will drag you down, but the average wins. So in terms of relationships or lovers or whatever, is that pick them wisely, because if, for instance, you have a very stressful relationship, that can completely change your life. It really can. And, you'll be constantly in stress state, which means that because you're in stress state, evolutionarily speaking, we're running away from a threat internally, which means our digestion shuts down, which means you can get IBS, which means you're not processing your food properly, which means you're not getting your nutrients. So not only do you become more nutrient deficient, you're obviously not healing or sleeping as well. And it has a detrimental to your physical health just because of your mental health, and vice versa. It works both ways. So selecting who you have, is super important, more than we realize. And if you have toxic friendships or very stressful friendships, you should eject them. In fact, I learned this from Tim Ferriss back 2014, I think. I heard him do a podcast, and he said, if 80% of your problems come from 20% of the people, you know exactly what to do. Actually, I brought out my business partner about 3 weeks after that, because it made me realize it was a toxic relationship, and I was not happy and stressful, and it was making me sick. So I brought him out as a result of that one quote, and it's stuck with me ever since then. And it's like, if there is someone that causes too much drama, as much as I love them, if there's too much drama or too much stress, it really can ruin your day and put you into a stress state, which then ruins your sleep. And you can see this in your data. So it's like, okay, I'll shy away from that. I just let them be. And then you select the good circle. Like in our mutual friends, for instance, all great eggs, all supportive, never bad words, no drama. Everyone's just trying to help lift everyone. And as a result, life becomes better, faster through compound effect.
Yeah, even this morning, I actually woke up really early for some reason. And I texted one of my friends who just moved here and is close. And I said, do you want to go for a run or a workout? He's like, yeah. He was up at 6 a.m. He said, yes. We went for a run. We did like a 15-minute visualization meditation. We did some pull-ups after, and we just hung out. But it just showed me as well, like, the importance. If you have people like that in your life who will support you, who will keep you accountable, or be the ones who be like, hey, let's do this more physical exercise versus, hey, let's go drinking in the pub and get wasted, on a Friday night. As you said, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So it shapes you as a person so much. And I've seen also in regards to, as you said, kind of our mutual friends in terms of business. When I find myself, say, hanging out with people who are just, really pushing themselves to the next level, I find like, wow, like I can do that too. Like, why am I playing so small? I can also do that. And they give you that mindset and belief. And I think part of the reason why, we're doing this podcast at the moment as well is be able to share that with people, whether it be watching or listening, hopefully while they're doing something useful in terms of exercise or something like that, to be able to take them to the next level. I personally, because many people, for a long time in my life, I didn't have actually friends. Because I just, as you said, it just shows like these people are not having a positive effect on my life. I'll rather be alone. And I surrounded myself with friends like, I would listen to Tony Robbins or Tim Ferriss or these people. They became my kind of five average friends until, of course, I realized and took action in my life to then create that network. My nephew who's here, who's kind of helping us film and record this, I always kind of also remind him of the importance of your network, because, and at the same time, it's not built overnight. Let's say I hosted a dinner for a lot of people yesterday, and you see all these successful people with, crazy businesses, or they're influencers, or they're creators and making millions of dollars. That took decades. So I think as well, I just want to kind of say a reminder of, first work on yourself. As you said, really maybe eject people from your life. Yes, it may sound harsh, but it may be needed. Otherwise, they're going to just drag you down. So other things in terms of, to switch from this topic, one of your favorite segments on your Instagram, which everyone should follow, so it's Tim Biohacker, you can find that with that, is kind of do this, like this or not that. Like it's like you give people choices of what you should avoid, and there's a lot of usually there's a lot of what to avoid, and you're like, oh crap, there's nothing I can eat in a grocery store, pretty much. So I'm curious of what are those things that those top things that people should avoid that they may be potentially consuming on a daily basis?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So first of all, I would approach the reason why it's so negative. In some cases, I mean, when I talk about what to avoid, people are like, I've got to avoid this. But it gets engagement. It gets people to see the post. For instance, I'll say, here's a problem, like avoid farmed salmon because it's the most toxic food that there is, in my opinion, like non-man-made. Avoid it, but here's what you do. Whereas if I go, eat wild salmon and avoid the farmed, people don't engage with it because it hasn't got the, the stress response that goes with it. So the engagement is nothing. And so no one gets to see the content. So I did a reel specifically around this. It was like, I get it, you're annoyed because I'm sharing so much negative content, but when I talk about the positive stuff, people don't engage. I mean, like, you don't see the newspapers with positive news spread all across the front. It's always fear-driven because it gets us to get into the paper. It's exactly the same with Instagram. And unfortunately, the people determine the algorithm, and the algorithm determines the content. So yeah, that's why. So I just want to approach that. I don't want to do negative content all the time. And I do try to do some more positive things. And I always give people solutions. So I don't just leave them hanging as avoid this, and then that's it. But I think the general rule over everything in a supermarket, and I'm actually going to do a reel inspired by Max Lugavere, actually, is a reel of what you can eat around the supermarket. And I'm going to see how well this does. But if you were to eat fruit, veg, organic clean meat, wild fish, herbs, coffee, herbal teas, maple syrup, of course, what else do you need? Like, really, I mean, that is the fundamentals of food. And as Jamie Oliver said once, food doesn't have ingredients, it is the ingredients. So why would you buy a packet meal that has 150 ingredients including titanium dioxide, which is now shown to cause multiple health issues and allergies? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just buy the ingredients and make it?
Well, I think part of it is the convenience culture, also very North American kind of inspired. It's all about convenience, microwave and make things instant and easy, and that's what we, like you said, we have these two biases, right? Is our negativity bias towards seeing the negative, but also this bias towards how do we get things as fast as possible. And as you know, that's the easier sell. Get rich overnight, lose 50 pounds in 7 days, whatever it is. But as you said, one of the things is James Clear, book Atomic Habits. I think one of the reasons why it's been so popular is that if you can create consistent daily habits of lifestyle, of the way you lead your life, it will ultimately you won't even have to think about it with time. So what is your take in regards to creating those an easy way of some of the things that we discussed today, potentially creating those kind of habits in our lives that people can do. Because as you know, we're the 5-minute journal people. We like easy things that we can implement in our lives that can become a habit and then can give us all those benefits.
I mean, the habit is a heuristic. It's a really good heuristic, isn't it? It saves you having to think about other things. And I mean, you can do this with anything. I mean, if you were to write down, to start, for instance, it's like, how well did you sleep? And on a 1 to 10. And give yourself a number out of 10 every day. Actually, I was discussing this with our mutual friend Matas. It's like, imagine you could create an app where you scored everything on a, like for instance, I slept well, 10 points. I only ate organic, fresh, prepped food, 10. And you gave yourself a score out of 100 every day. It would gamify you to do better in each one of those things. So that's a good heuristic, a good way to keep a track of improving your lifestyle. Did I ground for 10 minutes? Okay, 100 points, blah, 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 blah. If you had the list of sleep well, eat well, hydrate well, ground well, these fundamentals, and ticked that you did one each day, that's a good heuristic. It's just to remind you to keep on track, a daily check-in. Did I drink filtered water today? Did I drink enough water? Did I remineralize it? Whatever the metrics could be, that is a good enough heuristic. And even in the 5-minute journal, did you do these things today? And give yourself a score at the end of the day, for instance.
Yeah, we have actually our 5-minute journal fit edition incorporates these. So we actually have the sleep, how much you slept, how much water you drank, but now we know we have to not just drink water, but also have minerals in it, and also just keeping track of the habits that you have as well. I think, overall, I just want to thank you so much for the knowledge that you share. I think everyone should definitely follow you on Tim Biohacker on Instagram or wherever they can find you. Is there anywhere else that you want to direct people to?
Come to the Health Optimisation Summit next June.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. Well, yeah, this is definitely evergreen. It was incredible to see Mimi. Actually, my wife was at the summit as well, presenting, and you had incredible guests like Ben Greenfield, Jim Quick, and all the really leaders in the space have put together. I guess maybe we can chat a little about the Health Optimization Summit, which is great. What was the idea around that? Like, why did you put this together? And it's pretty much your full-time thing now.
I did a meetup in London just because there wasn't many people like me back in 2017. I went to the Bulletproof Conference in Pasadena, realized there's a great tribe of biohackers and health optimizers and whatnot. Came back to London, there was nothing. And, I was hoping that I might find a healthy group of friends and maybe a healthy woman. So I started the meetup, and it grew to 200, 300, 400 people a month very quickly. People said, why don't you do a conference? And obviously after being at the Bulletproof Conference and various other ones, I was like, actually England doesn't have this, so I'm going to start it. Crazy idea, don't ask me why. And if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have done it for sure. Because as you know from organizing an event, there's a million things, and like a top line thing unpacks to be 50 different tasks below it. And I did it with one other person, mainly in year one, but we pulled it off. So it was just really to centralize the community in England or Europe and bring this mindset together, and also to bring the best from the US and Europe into London so that we could all benefit from the amazing event that I'd had in the US. And it's kind of grown from there. It's like 1,100 year one, 2,100 year two, 2,600 year three. So we're growing, and now we're just working on actually going to America. So I'm hoping to do that in October or November next year.
Oh, wow. Crossing over. Well, when's the next Health Optimization Summit?
June 2024.
Oh, there you go. So you can probably sign up now and check it out. I was there. It was great people. I've actually met so many also old and new friends. So it was incredible of having you create this experience for so many people and get people be part of the community. Because I think one of the things that we discussed, I think the way you create this also new network of friends of your 5, average friends that you hang out with, you have to go to those places where of the vision of who you want to become to be. And you won't find them in the pub. That's maybe you will sometimes, but it'll be a rare
law of averages,
like a law of averages, where you go to a place where people are there to improve themselves, and as you said, you can find a wife. I'm sure that's a measure of the event. I'm sure there's some people who hooked up and created families together and things like that. So overall, I just want to end this. I just want to show my gratitude for the work that you're doing, for inspiring people all over the world to lead healthier lives and to have healthier habits, and ultimately, just have a great time on this planet together. So thank you so much, Tim. Really
Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
having me. Yeah.